All right, guys, welcome back to Before I Die, and this is a place for people who basically maybe creative, maybe who is just for anybody who is actually going through a hard time and they feel like talking about it. And yeah, I'm going to go a little bit into myself right now and talk about some of the things I've been through. Okay, so I started out by saying talking about some of the things where I came from and how things were. I have been drawing all my life. I am not very good at it, but I'm not terrible at it either. But I'm also very creative when it comes to everything about advertising and things like that. And unfortunately, I come from a country that is still colonized by the French government. To those of you who don't know that, France still has about 14 colonies in Africa, which are not allowed to have their own currency, and basically they have to give 80% of all their resources back to the French government. So that's how it is. It is. If you are a European watching this and you hate seeing Africans in your country because maybe you don't like black people, okay, no problem. It's whatever you want, but maybe you should tell your leaders that they should just leave the Africans to keep their money in Africa and not have to be paying colonial taxes to a country like Europe, like France. Maybe you will see a lot less poor Africans roaming your streets. But that's aside. What I want to say is, before I die, okay, before I die, and I don't know if it will be soon. I don't know if it will be tomorrow. I don't know. But before I die, I'd like to see continent of free people. I'd like to see all the countries that use the French CFA to be actually free. And I would like to see the African leaders who have taken billions upon trillions of dollars and kept in Europe actually bring that money back to Africa and invest it. I don't care if they buy the entire Congo and name it after themselves, as long as they can develop it to the standards of modern civilization and development. That is something I'd like to see before I die. Now, I am saying this from the standpoint of a creative and of someone who would like to see so many things being done that would help people not get into the situation where I'm in, where they're on the point of being stranded in a foreign country because they cannot afford to live there anymore and they cannot secure a job. But I believe more and more people like myself, okay, could contribute to the African continent if we are given the opportunity. And since the opportunities are not there, we keep finding ourselves in situations like this. So before I die, that is something I'd like to see. I'd like to see a free Africa. And if you are, I know the big bankers, you guys never end up on the internet like this or watch anything, but if your dad or your uncle or your auntie is one of the big bankers who controls the world, I don't know what family you're from, and you happen to stumble upon this video, guess what? I know this seems like a completely radical idea, and I know some of you are extremely racist. It doesn't really matter, but let's talk about the money. If you open those huge banks that you have in Africa, the money will still be yours. The African leaders who want to keep their money, who have stolen money from their nations and they want to keep it, they will still keep it in your banks, but the banks will be in Africa. What I mean is, I don't mean you should just open an office in Africa. No, I mean you should open an actual treasury in Africa. Okay? Because I know that there are countries like Iran or North Korea that you guys don't like because they have basically, they're financially independent. Okay? I get it. I get it. You want to make more money, you want to stay in power for the next million years. It doesn't really matter. Keep the money in Africa. Let the people use it, invest more, you get more money because they're still keeping it in your banks. But if there is nothing for people like me, then that place would keep being a sinkhole. And this is not sustainable. Perhaps now you have the billions of dollars of Africans in Europe. But what happens when your source would run dry? Because trust me, more and more Africans are becoming conscious. Your source could run dry. You have to rethink your strategy. So before I die, that is something I'd like to see. I'd like to hear, okay, that maybe Citibank doesn't just have a branch in Africa, but they have opened one of the largest gold reserves in the world in Africa. I want to hear that. Okay, one of the largest investment banks that doesn't just loan money to governments which would end up back in Europe, no, but gives money to actual young and productive people in Africa who would use that money to build that continent and thereby making more money for you. It's that simple. It's all about the money, right? So, before I die, that is something I'd like to see.